Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab, sponsored by CPA Practice Advisor, with your hosts, Randy Johnston and Brian Tankersley.
Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab. I'm Randy Johnston with my co-host, Brian Tankersley. Now, today we're going to take you a slightly different path on artificial intelligence with the tax research tool of BlueJay. Now, they claim to be generative AI for tax experts, and the company has been around for quite a little while, founded in 2015 in Toronto. Now, I think this is actually worth hearing. You might find it on their website if you'd like to have it again. But on their website, they say they were founded in 2015. BlueJay is a legal technology company on a mission to improve people's lives by bringing absolute clarity to the law. And then our software empowers tax and legal professionals to perform exceptional analysis and deliver more insights faster. And I think those claims are true. Now, they have operational offices in Toronto and in New York. And it turns out that this company has done some innovative things. A little later in the podcast, we'll circle back and talk about BlueJay's charter on algorithmic responsibility. But Brian, what would you like our listeners to know about the BlueJay tax research?
Well, their product is called Ask BlueJay, and it is a generative AI tool. And so you can ask it questions about tax law and other things like that. And then it creates these answers that are verifiable. Now, one of the concerns we have with using many of the generative AI tools is the propensity of some of those tools, especially the early versions of them, to do what's called hallucinate, where when they know something, they do fine. But when they don't know something, or the data on the training data is a little thin, it will try to guess and make things up, and it will make something up that's kind of questionable. And so since this is focused on legal technology, the option of being wrong is not an option. And so this, again, this tool in here actually ingests and will spit back to you multiple authoritative services. Again, it works relatively quickly. It will also do the first draft of a client memo or of a memo to the file on different things. And it is good at keeping the main thing. You know, one of the hard things about research memos is that sometimes people get off on tangents about the exceptions to exceptions, and they don't keep the main thing. And so this is really designed to do this. And it's actually used by a number of large firms. KPMG uses this, Larson Gross, Anderson Legal, Business, and Tax. And again, the idea here is that we can take this and you can have it go through and look up and give you the authoritative resources on things, and it will give you kind of a summary of what those things say, so that you can kind of get into something that is maybe on the edge of your competency. Now that, again, because you can't know everything in the tax code, and you can't know every decision and everything else. But the generative AI model can ingest all of that, and then it can provide those resources back to you when you're looking for some of this information.
Yeah. So, it turns out the history here is a little bit good to know, because AI has been around a long time. Brian, you've heard me say multiple times, I wrote AI code in Lisp in 1975. The AI then was a lot different than AI now. And if we go back to the 2010 machine and how those evolved and so forth, there's been a lot of changes in the last 15 years. In particular, the CEO of the company, Benjamin Allary, was an associate dean of the Faculty of Law at the University of Toronto, and he was invited into IBM Watson competition as a judge, and he started thinking about the use of AI in tax law and the ability to use machine learning to predict outcomes and recommendations. So they had their prototype running on the Watson platform in 2016. And of course, today, the IBM Watson, now Watson X, is also far more sophisticated, but they began selling the tax product commercially and then expanded over into employment and HR and U.S. law. Now, just a privacy statement here, because we have talked about privacy in other sessions with you. The Canadian privacy laws are far more restrictive than U.S. laws. And even though there, at this point in time, there's 7 U.S. privacy laws in force with 19 of them passed, there are Canadian national privacy laws as well as laws province by province. And this product is compliant with the Canadian laws, the US laws, the European Union laws, the UK laws. I mean, they're very cognizant about this compliance. So, Brian, it probably goes back to this legal background. You can't be wrong.
And I've actually read the Canadian privacy law, and it seems like the Canadians are trying to almost one up the European Union and say we're more private than you are. So anyway, it's an interesting, it's an interesting statute. But the good news is, with it coming out of Canada, maybe we've got a better chance for things staying private, even though they're using heavy generative AI here.
Yeah.
And I think that's a critical thing that I think is helpful. And again, the compliance with both Canadian and European statutes, I think, is a big win for this product.
Yeah. Now, the thing that they did early on, February 14th of 2020, they published a charter on algorithmic responsibility. This might come from their academic background, Brian, and I know you've done a lot of research, probably more than I have, on some of these compliance issues globally and the evolution of compliance and regulation around AI. But they made 8 specific claims on their AI algorithmic position. It is, you can read these on your website. You don't have to listen to us talk about it so much, but it's under their About Us section under their company area, because there they show not only the people involved, but this algorithmic positioning. And, these 8 items are pretty interesting. So, Brian, would you like to comment on those items?
Well, one of the major things with AI is that it is only as good as how it's trained. And so we've had a lot of misrecognition of underrepresented groups and people of color simply because so many of the facial recognition algorithms have been trained almost exclusively with people of Caucasian and Asian descent, as opposed to being trained with, and have not had as many from Europe or Southern Europe or Asia or Southern or Southeast Asia, or again some of the other places in the world. And so as a result, they're trying to build in things that actively avoid those biases. They also monitor the outcomes and provide feedback loops to try to make sure to try to guard against this hallucination that we've talked about that exists in ChatGPT and other places. They also want human oversight and control, want to improve the human condition. So it's not as much about replacing humans as it is about taking ministerial tasks away, so that the humans can focus on relationships and on again the overall 30,000-foot view, as opposed to digging down into each little particular rat hole. They invest in data quality, so they try to make sure that their things are going forward well. They also insist on high standards of accuracy, and they safeguard privacy and security, and they've had SOC 2s for some time. So I think that's an important piece that they bring to the table, that they are very, very serious about privacy, because there are a lot of concerns when we start talking about the privacy of tax data. I was actually just surfing around YouTube, and I saw a presentation by Senator John Kennedy out of Louisiana, where he was talking about the federal IRS leaks, and he talked about his experience as the revenue commissioner in Louisiana. And I think he's absolutely right that people are very, very particular about maintaining their privacy of their information. And this privacy thing, especially when it comes to tax and personal information, is something that the value of this cannot be underestimated, simply because it's it's one of those table stakes things that a lot of people don't realize. And I'm very concerned that with some of the products in the marketplace, we may have made some Faustian bargains where we have now let things out of the, we've let things out of the barn, and now we've got to figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah. So, trying to maybe get to the some of the other things that I want to make sure our listeners knew today, Brian. The 8 claims that BlueJay makes in their AI statement, again, 2020, 4 years ago: avoid creating and reinforcing inappropriate bias, continuously monitor outcomes, provide transparent and data outputs, allow for humans oversight and control, improve the human condition, invest in data quality, insist on high standards of accuracy, and safeguard privacy and security. You covered all those, I believe, but I wanted to call them out like that because I believe that those largely came from something you and I have talked about for 6 years, a little more than that actually, because on May 16th, 2018, the Toronto Declaration came out. And it was about bias in machine learning. And you and I have presented on machine learning and AI for years, but the Toronto Declaration and consequent rulings in other international meetings were quite good. Now, the reason I'm very sensitive to this bias in machine learning or bias in AI, our listeners will certainly get some amusement over the fact that there are 6 software tools that sort applicant data. About 20 million applications of employees are processed per month in the Fortune 500 with these AI-based tools. I have run my data through all 6 of these tools, and I'm unqualified for an IT position. Okay. So I just thought you might find that a little interesting because the bias in the applicant processing data throws me out. But let's flip it around for those of you who want to be a lot more practical. If you're looking for leverage from AI and you are a tax specialist and you would like to accelerate your tax guidance and be able to base it in fact, we think BlueJay may be one of your best options out there. We have done other accounting technology podcasts on the new iterations in the Thomson Reuters Checkpoint product, the Checkpoint Edge and its co-counsel. We've done that on Wolters Kluwer and so forth. But this is a nifty doggone little product that's got a lot of head start and I think could be quite useful. So Brian, other key things you think our listeners would benefit from knowing?
Well, first off, I think you need to consider that there are also products from both Wolters Kluwer and from Thomson Reuters that integrate with those suites of applications. So if you're using Checkpoint or Tax Research Network or again, Accounting Research Manager, just know that those tools are out there. And again, this is another product that I think fits a similar need that will help solve this problem we have of how do we get the right answer faster and get it communicated faster so that we'd be better at our job and be right all the time.
Yeah. So Brian, you don't want to just make it up that the Tankersley owe no tax. You think that's a bad decision?
Nah, that's not going to go very well. It's not going to end. That's going to end in a trip to the Crossbar Hotel, I fear.
I'm afraid so. Well, we appreciate all of you listeners with us again today. We'll talk to you again soon in another Technology Accounting Lab. Good day.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. We'll be back next Saturday with a new episode of the Technology Lab from CPA Practice Advisor. Have a great week.